Welcome, dear friends. Today I will tell you a story of love, betrayal, and unexpected consequences. Enjoy the story. Marissa sipped her latte, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping impatiently against the marble tabletop. Across from her, Tanya leaned in, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "So, how's the hunt for Mr. Moneybags going?" Tanya smirked, her voice low and conspiratorial. Marissa sighed, her full lips pursed in frustration. "It's not. Philip is too damn careful. He always uses protection, no matter how much I try to seduce him." Tanya raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Well, you know what they say. If you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Or in this case, trap 'em with a baby." Marissa's eyes widened. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Tanya leaned back, a sly grin spreading across her face. "I might know a guy who can get you something to make Philip lose control. One night of unprotected passion and bam, you're set for life." Marissa bit her lip, her mind racing with the possibilities. She knew it was wrong, knew she was playing with fire, but the thought of finally securing her future, of never having to worry about money again, it was too tempting to resist. "I'll do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we have to be careful. If Philip finds out—" Tanya waved a dismissive hand. "He won't. Just make sure you don't overdo it with the drug. You want him to lose control, not lose his mind." Marissa nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. She was about to embark on the most dangerous game of her life, and there was no turning back now. The candlelight flickered across Marissa's face as she swirled the wine in her glass, her eyes fixed on Philip's handsome features. They were dining at his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them like a sea of stars. Marissa had slipped the drug into Philip's drink earlier, her hands shaking with nerves as she watched him down the glass. Now, as the minutes ticked by, she could feel the tension building between them, the air crackling with a primal energy. "You look beautiful tonight," Philip murmured, his voice low and husky. His eyes raked over her body, lingering on the deep neckline of her dress. Marissa smiled coyly, leaning forward to give him a tantalizing glimpse of her cleavage. "Thank you. I dressed up just for you." Suddenly, Philip stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Marissa's heart leapt into her throat as he stalked towards her, his eyes blazing with a hunger she had never seen before. He pulled her to her feet, his hands roaming over her curves, his lips crashing down on hers in a bruising kiss. Marissa melted into his embrace, her own desire igniting like a wildfire. They stumbled towards the bedroom, clothes flying in every direction. Philip's touch was electric, his skin hot against hers as they tumbled onto the bed. Marissa gasped as he entered her, his thrusts deep and primal. She clung to him, her nails raking down his back, her body shuddering with pleasure. It was everything she had ever wanted, everything she had dreamed of. But as quickly as it had begun, it was over. Philip rolled off of her, his breathing ragged, his eyes wide with confusion. Without a word, he stood up, pulling on his clothes with jerky movements. "Philip?" Marissa called after him, her voice small and uncertain. "Where are you going?" But he was already out the door, leaving her alone in the tangled sheets, her body still thrumming with the aftershocks of their lovemaking. Marissa hugged her knees to her chest, a sudden chill washing over her. She had succeeded in getting what she wanted, but at what cost? And where had Philip gone? Still under the influence of the drug, his desire unsated. She shivered, a feeling of dread settling in the pit of her stomach. Something told her that this was only the beginning of a nightmare she could never wake up from. 3 weeks later, Marissa sat across from Philip in his office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head, but now that it was finally here, she felt like she was going to be sick. "Philip," she began, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked up from his computer, his brow furrowed in concern. "What is it, Marissa? Is everything all right?" Marissa took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her ears. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of their implications. Philip's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Are you sure?" he finally managed to choke out, his voice hoarse. Marissa nodded, tears springing to her eyes. I took a test. Several, actually. They were all positive. Philip leaned back in his chair, his hand running through his hair. I can't believe this. We were always so careful. Marissa bit her lip, guilt churning in her stomach. If only he knew the truth, knew the lengths she had gone to make this happen. I know it's a shock, she said softly, reaching out to take his hand. But I think this could be a good thing, Philip. A baby, a family. It's what we've always wanted. Philip sighed, his eyes distant and troubled. I suppose you're right. I never thought it would happen like this. He squeezed her hand, a resigned smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I guess we're getting married then. Marissa's heart soared, even as a sliver of guilt twisted in her gut. She had gotten what she wanted, but the price she had paid, she feared it would haunt her for the rest of her life. Philip paced the length of Kevin's office, his face drawn and haggard. Kevin watched him from behind his desk, concern etched in every line of his face. What's going on, man? Kevin asked, leaning forward. You look like hell. Philip stopped, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. I did something, Kev. Something terrible. Kevin's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Philip sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The night Marissa told me she was pregnant, I wasn't myself. I was out of my mind, like I was possessed or something. He looked up, his eyes haunted. I went to the park. There was a woman there, homeless, pregnant. I forced myself on her, Kev. I raped her. Kevin's face went slack with shock. Jesus, Philip. Are you sure? Philip nodded miserably. I remember everything. The look on her face, the way she screamed. I'm a monster, Kev. I don't deserve to be a father, to be with Marissa. Kevin leaned back, his mind racing. Wait a minute. You said you felt like you were possessed? Like you weren't in control? Philip nodded, his brow furrowed. Yeah. It was like I was watching myself from outside my body. I couldn't stop, no matter how much I wanted to. Kevin's eyes widened with realization. The drug? Marissa must have drugged you. Philip's head snapped up. What? No, that's impossible. Marissa would never. But even as the words left his mouth, doubt crept in like a poison. He thought back to that night, to the strange taste of the wine, to the way Marissa had been so eager, so insistent. Oh my God, he whispered, his face draining of color. What have I done? Marissa and Tanya huddled together in the corner booth of a dingy diner, their voices low and urgent. We have a problem, Marissa hissed, her eyes darting around the room. Philip wants proof of the pregnancy. He wants to come to the ultrasound. Tanya's eyes widened. Shit, what are we going to do? It's not like you can just fake a baby on the screen. Marissa bit her lip, her mind racing. The women began to look over their options. There was no one suitable. And then Tanya pushed Marissa. Look. Marissa turned around. What to look at? Some ragamuffin asking for water? You missed the most important thing. She said she's pregnant. No belly yet. So, somewhere close to your pregnancy. Marina's revitalized. Let's go talk to her. They approached the woman, who looked up warily as they slid into the seats on either side of her. Hi, Marissa said brightly, her voice dripping with false cheer. I'm Marissa, and this is my friend Tanya. We couldn't help but notice. Are you pregnant? The woman's hand went instinctively to her belly. Yes, she said cautiously. Why do you ask? Marissa leaned in, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. My friend and I have a proposition for you, one that could help us all out. The woman's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. Marissa smiled, her teeth glinting in the fluorescent light. I need you to pretend to be me for a little while, just long enough to get an ultrasound, to show my fiancé that I'm really pregnant. The woman recoiled, her face twisting with disgust. Are you out of your mind? I'm not going to help you lie to your fiancé. Tanya reached out, her hand closing over the woman's. We'll make it worth your while, she purred, her voice like silk. $5,000 cash, enough to give your baby a good start in life. The woman hesitated, her eyes darting between the two women. Marissa could see the desperation warring with the disgust in her eyes, the need for money battling with her morals. Okay, the woman said finally, her shoulders slumping with defeat. I'll do it, but just this once, and then I never want to see either of you again. Marissa grinned, triumph surging through her veins. Deal. What's your name, sweetie? Madison, the woman said softly, her hand rubbing circles over her belly. My name is Madison. The clinic was cold and sterile, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Marissa sat in the waiting room, her leg bouncing with nerves as she watched the door. Madison had gone in nearly an hour ago, her belly exposed for all the world to see. Marissa had coached her on what to say, how to act. But what if something went wrong? What if the doctor saw through their ruse? Suddenly, the door burst open, and Philip stormed into the waiting room, his face a mask of fury. Marissa leapt to her feet, her heart in her throat. Philip, she gasped, what are you doing here? But he wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on Madison, who had emerged from the exam room, her face pale and stricken. You, Philip snarled, his finger jabbing at Madison. I know you. You're the woman from the park, the one I... He trailed off, his face twisting with anguish. Madison's eyes widened with recognition, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. It's you, the father of my baby. Marissa's head whipped around, her eyes bulging with shock. What? What are you talking about? Philip turned to her, his eyes hard and cold. I know everything, Marissa. I know about the drug, about your sick little plan to trap me. And now I know the truth about that night, about what I did. He turned back to Madison, his face softening with regret. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I never meant to hurt you, to do what I did. I wasn't myself. I was... drugged, Madison finished, her voice trembling. By her? Marissa felt the world tilt beneath her feet, her carefully constructed web of lies unraveling before her eyes. She opened her mouth to protest, to deny everything. But the words died on her lips as she saw the disgust and betrayal in Philip's eyes. We're done, Marissa, he said coldly, his voice like a knife in her heart. I never want to see you again, and if you come near me or Madison, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. With that, he turned on his heel and strode out of the clinic, leaving Marissa to crumple to the floor, her dreams of a perfect future shattered like glass. Months later, Philip stood in the hospital room, his newborn daughter cradled in his arms. She was perfect, from her rosebud lips to her tiny wriggling toes. Madison lay in the bed beside him, her face pale and tired but glowing with a radiant joy. Philip looked down at her, his heart swelling with a love he had never known before. She's beautiful, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion, just like her mother. Madison smiled, her hand reaching out to stroke the baby's downy head. I never thought I could be this happy, she murmured. After everything that happened, everything I've been through. Philip took her hand, his fingers lacing with hers. I know I can never take back what I did to you that night, he said softly. But I swear to you, Madison, I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, to our daughter. I will love you both with every breath in my body, until the day I die. Madison's eyes filled with tears, her smile trembling on her lips. I know you will, she whispered, because I love you too, Philip, more than I ever thought possible. He leaned down, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. The baby cooed between them, a tiny miracle born of the darkest of circumstances. As Philip looked down at his little family, he knew that this was where he was meant to be, not with Marissa, not with his wealth or his status, but here, in this moment, with the two people who owned his heart and soul. It had been a long and winding road, filled with pain and betrayal and heartbreak. But in the end, love had triumphed, and as Philip held his daughter close, he knew that he would never let it go again.